Federalism is the singular question in American history. What government policies should people adopt locally or nationally? It's the debate that never goes away. Federalism was the framers' key innovation in writing the Constitution in 1787, and the central compromise that allowed 13 skeptical states to ratify it by 1790. Unlike the failed Articles of Confederation, which was essentially a treaty between 13 independent sovereigns, the Constitution created a workable national government. From the outset, federalism required the U.S. Constitution to balance national and local power. In doing so, the Constitution created a national legislature, Congress, with far more power than the Continental Congress. But at the same time, the powers it gave Congress were limited and enumerated. Everything else was left to the state legislatures and the people. The newly created head of the executive branch, the president, also had limited and enumerated powers. He could, for example, lead the military branches, veto proposed legislation, and enforce national, civil, and criminal laws. But other executive powers were left to state governors. The creation of a national court system would unify interpretations of the U.S. Constitution and check the elected branches of the national and state governments if they exceeded their powers. Thanks to life tenure, federal judges could interpret the U.S. Constitution without fear or favor. The balance of power between the national and state governments has evolved over time, often through amendments to the Constitution. Some, like the Bill of Rights, limited the national government, not the state governments, for roughly a century and a half. But amendments to the Constitution have most often given power to the national government. The 16th Amendment authorized Congress to impose a national income tax. The 19th Amendment nationalized the right of women to vote by barring any contrary local laws. And the 26th Amendment nationalized the right to vote of those 18 and over. Surely one of the most prominent increases in national power arose over the Union's challenges in dealing with slavery and its legacy. To begin with, the Constitution apportioned seats in the House of Representatives according to population, counted by the whole number of free persons and 3/5 of all other persons. It also demanded that one state return an enslaved fugitive who had fled to another state, no matter what their local laws said. But it otherwise left the states to determine whether one human being could own another, ultimately setting them on a collision course. When the United States emerged from the Civil War, national solutions took center stage. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment barred racial discrimination by the states. And the 15th Amendment gave citizens the right to vote regardless of race. Another virtue of American federalism is that, in the words of Justice Louis Brandeis, it allows a single courageous state to try novel social and economic experiments without risk to the rest of the country. A local test run may set the stage for a solution that attracts a following in other states, or for an idea that Congress or the U.S. Supreme Court eventually adopts for the whole country. Or it may set the stage for a local solution to an eminently local problem. Under American federalism, there are 3 types of stories when it comes to the constitutional protection of our individual rights. In one story, the U.S. Supreme Court uses the national Constitution to resolve a national problem. Brown versus Board of Education, for example, brought a national end to the Jim Crow chapter of American history. In the second story, dialogue between the states eventually leads to a national solution. The right to counsel, recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court in Gideon versus Wainwright in 1963, was already recognized by the majority of states prior to the court's ruling. In the third story, local solutions to local problems remain the order of the day, whether it's because the problem defies a national solution or has generated several useful solutions. The framers of the United States Constitution could not have anticipated the many challenges the future would bring, but they gave future generations a marvelous tool, American federalism, for handling them.